Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Jackie Fekeci, and I'm excited to kick off our very first webinar for the AI Security Council. A little bit of background. The AI Security Council brings together security leaders and experts from various organizations to help tackle the challenges and discuss the future of AI-powered cybersecurity. So the council helps define how AI is being used and defended across the enterprise, analyzes how AI affects cybersecurity in practice, and helps anticipate adversarial AI. So ultimately, the council is delivering actual field-tested strategies and releasing actionable frameworks for defending modern environments. So today we're going to be discussing the findings from our first workshop on rethinking cyber defense in the age of AI. And I'm excited to be joined here today by Chris Kirschke, who moderated the workshops, and two of the fantastic panelists, Cassandra, Mack, and Antoinette Stevens. So I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Cassandra, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Thanks, Jackie. I'm Cassandra Mack, CISO of TensorWave, an AI compute startup, and the host of the Cyber Breakfast Club, Las Vegas, and Women's West chapters.
Perfect. Antoinette?
I'm Antoinette Stevens, Principal Security Engineer at RAMP, leading security detection and response, security incidents, and various other enterprise security related things. And I am also the person at RAMP who kind of spun up our AI security and AI governance programs.
Awesome. Last but not least, Chris?
Kirschke, I'm the CISO here at Tuskira. I lead our pre and post and support and lead the AI Security Council.
Awesome. So before we officially jump into the discussion, just a few quick housekeeping items. We really want to hear from you, so we're going to make sure to save some time at the end of the discussion and take a handful of audience questions. So just submit your questions via the chat feature at the bottom of the window, and we'll get to as many as possible. And then any questions that we don't get to live will be answered either via chat or in a follow-up email. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it over to you to help uncover the findings from the workshop.
Yeah, thank you. So I think I'm going to start at the foundational layer, which leads me to the question of how do you see AI improving fundamentals like identity, segmentation, visibility, traceability? Yeah, I know we've talked a bit about this in the council, but I want to hear your viewpoints real quick here. Cassandra, you start?
So I think, if we start embracing AI a little bit better and stop fearing it as much as we are, there are many opportunities that we have there. Everything from looking at baselines in a different way and being able to analyze from less of a, I think we're a little bit too close to our data, and we start to feel very defensive of the things that we're seeing. And I've noticed just by opening up my mind and using a little bit more of the AI tools that I will see things that I never saw before. So just even looking at my tool stack to see what other tools can I bring in, what startups are out there that I can look at that are doing new and different things that I didn't even know were possible. So not even diving down into the individual areas of my security baseline, but just looking at it as a holistic change really has made a big difference for me.
Just to piggyback on what you said, I've always kind of felt like security detection and response is a data problem, like at its core. A lot of what we do has to do with how we interact with big data and the various things that we can do across it to look for anomalies and other issues. And I think we have thrown people who are not data scientists at this problem for a while, and now we have at our fingertips a cheap data scientist. And so I think being able to adopt AI and use models that can reason and think in a way that helps you to look at a lot of the signals in large amounts of data will ultimately help with identifying threats.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Usually, we've always gone down the machine learning, garbage in, garbage out, trying to find the anomalies in. And now with the models themselves and the advances there, you're actually just saying, hey, reason through this data for me. And it's a fundamental change, I think, in the way security actually approaches the data that they have. I think you've seen the market also kind of shift. You've seen the rise of the security data pipeline companies, even the consolidation there that started to happen. And I think that amplifies the need to know your data, to make sure that your data is solid, they're clean, and that it's coming into your models correctly. Totally. It's a fundamental shift here. So now, given that, do you see any risks in over-reliance on AI? Antoinette, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. I think that in the crudest way possible, over-reliance on AI means you cease to think for yourself. And so you might think, oh, I need to solve this problem, and your immediate go-to is ChatGPT or something else, where you probably could have solved it quicker yourself if you took a couple minutes to think about what you were asking and like do your normal path. Because I've seen ChatGPT get a lot of things wrong. And if you don't already have domain knowledge about something, it's really easy to just apply that. And so I think the risk there is we were already kind of living in a age of fear of misinformation. And so I do wonder if we're kind of making that problem a little worse when we blindly trust the outputs that come from AI. The other side of that coin comes with like using AI to generate code. So if you are non-technical and you want to build an app, I think that AI lowered that barrier, which is great. But if you don't also have the skill set to go back and say, this is a problem, we're going to end up with a lot of apps out there that are vulnerable because there was a over-reliance on AI and a trust that it would do the right thing, when that might not be where we're at in our journey with generative AI right now.
Your thoughts, Cassandra?
So I read an interesting study from Carnegie Mellon that said that any company that doesn't have 8 AI projects is way behind. So I think, it kind of underscores the sentiment that we should all be rushing to have our own AI programs, and we should be going faster and stronger in that direction. But I think that every company and every team needs to fundamentally take a step back and think about, how are we using the AI and how are we using it effectively? Because we need to retrain people to how to even talk to it. Like, how do you properly do prompts so that you can get the best data? And how do you reason with it, right? Are you using it as another voice of expertise, like a Monte Carlo model, where you're looking for experts to give you all the data so that you can then sort through it and figure out what you want to keep from it? And are you validating just like you would if you were talking to a panel of people to figure out whether they know what they're talking about or not, right? We need to think of it that way, right? It's other voices in the room. Do we trust them? Have we asked them the right question? Have we asked them the question behind the question? And not just, as Antoinette said, just blindly taking it as gospel and doing, important things really fast and potentially making bad decisions.
Yeah, I think that's both very salient points. And I think, I've seen this in my career as a security leader, especially in the last few years, is when you're actually interviewing or you're looking to build your team out, the AI literate requirement is a real thing. You want them to be able to not only be able to understand how AI truly functions and works and operates, and you need to secure it, but they need to understand how to talk to it, how to leverage it, how to automate, to use it to automate the tasks. And I think you're starting to see more and more of the candidates and the talent pipelines coming up that are actually truly, living and breathing it. But I think it's a differentiator in how we build our security talent pipeline over the next 5-10 years. I'm gonna dig in on one of the comments that you made in the over reliance and not thinking for yourself. Like, just shove it off to the side, let AI deal with it. So it's a Friday afternoon thing, something like that. So how do you clarify where you draw the line? Or, everybody wants to use human in the loop in their conversations, but how do you clarify when you're building out your processes or job, security jobs to be done, flows? where that human in the loop or where that AI non-reliance is going to be.
The boundary for me is destructive behavior, right? So I wouldn't want the AI to be able to take a step that could lead to something I can't undo. And so that's kind of where my line is there of like there needs to be a human in the loop before this AI closes out a security alert or something like that. Because I don't want to miss something because the reasoning from the model was incorrect. And so that's kind of where my mental model lies right now is if I can't undo this easily, then I need to be the final sign off here. Because if something goes wrong, I can't sue the model. I can't blame OpenAI or Anthropic. It's ultimately my responsibility to make sure that the work that I'm doing is accurate.
I couldn't
Cassandra?
agree more. The way I look at it and the way I train teams that I interact with is there is a growing need for us to look at third parties and nth parties, which are people who are part of the food chain for your third party providers. We're doing more work to try to understand who they are and what each of those components are in their food chain of whatever we're buying, whether it's an electric component that's inside of a server, or it's somebody providing a service to us that connects directly through an API to our system. You have to think of the AI the same way. It's an nth party that we do not understand. We do not understand the pieces and components of that. So we need to treat it with a certain level of distrust. And I very much think of it as like a managed service security provider, right? We wouldn't let them just shut a system down without our permission, right? We give them rules, we give them trees, we tell them what they're allowed to do. And even then we give them an escape hatch if they're not sure what to do or they feel uncomfortable, they're supposed to call somebody. So, you have to build those boundaries and those guardrails and make sure that your teams understand how to use it effectively and just don't give it too much authority when you don't really know what you're dealing with. And then as you learn more and you feel more comfortable with it, especially like, let's just say you've got a homegrown model that you're controlling, you can control the training of that a lot better than you can something that is external. So you really need to look at the risk associated with how you're training, how you're feeding the data, and really who's using it, right? Because it's only going to be as good as the person sitting behind the keyboard and, providing that back and forth input to make it smarter.
Yeah, I was having a really interesting conversation yesterday with a CISO from a healthcare company, and we started to end up brainstorming around the idea of an AI racing. Like, and what does that actually mean? At what time is it autonomous? At what time is the human in the loop consulted? Or are they just informed through some type of alert or message? I think it's something that I think the AI Security Council could really thrive and frame. But I think I think a lot of folks struggle with that. Like, oh, I can just have AI, automate that. To what extent? And at what point, like Antoinette said, do you want to be in the loop to prevent a destructive? We just saw this with one of the app companies. It deleted a database and lied. They're in when we're in the security world. We're changing access rules, we're changing identities, permissions, we're changing, firewall rules. Like the destruction is immediate and it's impactful to the business. Are you going to say something, Cassandra?
I was just going to say, people struggle enough with RACI just with people, right? Like not even with automation or machines. And so wrapping your head around how do you build a little bit of guardrail or security around this giant unknown is going to be a real challenge. And I think that the more we start to get people in the mindset of threat modeling, the better we'll get at this, because it's still a relatively new science and a lot of practitioners don't get like, how do I start with the threat vector and how do I back my way up to like, where is my vulnerability within my system and within my thought process and within my people, to be able to figure out what do I even need to think about, because it's really daunting, especially if you're not used to thinking about something that's unknown. You're used to buying off-the-shelf products or things that you already know well or that you can trust. And so now we're all kind of venturing out into the wild, wild west and trying to take matters into our own hands. And, it's going to there's going to be an emerging field of people who can help people through this stuff. And I think they're starting to pop up, but we're not quite there yet.
From my end, I see a lot of this of being like an identity focused question, especially if you're talking about what can the AI do autonomously and how can I control that? I think it begins and ends with what permissions, what scope is it running with in the first place. And so I think there's a concept where we will begin to see the identity field kind of split into what permissions are granted to an AI agent versus what gets granted to a human. And if I am a human authorizing an agent to act on my behalf, what is the framework for sub permissions that they have that they can do, but maybe not others? Even if I as a user have scope to do something, this agent cannot. And I think we'll see more complexity and granularity come from companies as more accidents kind of start happening.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I think also in there is the audit trail, right? You know, if I allow or if I permit my AI to do something on my behalf, that has to be, you know, auditable, right? That trail has to be there. Some mechanism in place. And I think there's a dangerous move towards chat ops for a lot of this. And I think while AI does a phenomenal job of bringing in the summarization and the context around that alert that comes into chat ops, it's still, I see it on my phone, I'm at lunch. Yeah, go ahead. Oops. I think that's going to be, we're going to get to I won't say a correction, but I think a little bit of brakes will be put on, you know, the way we've adopted chat ops and AI. It's the easy button, so I get why people do it. I mean, but I think it's just going to be we'll have an oops a daisy moment here that
I'm a little
the
concerned
industry kind of
too,
corrects.
you know, how we currently have a lot of issues with just the cost of storing data and processing data. So, you know, think about just the massive, you know, now that I'm in the compute space, I think about this all the time, right? The massive amount of money and space that it takes to store and process this data. So people will start doing what we've always been doing, which is making opportunity cost decisions, which are, you know, are we going to store all that log data? Are we going to process this log data? And then later when we need to do something with it, we're going to realize, oh, we made a decision not to do that. And now we don't have it. So we don't have key pieces of information to make our system better. And I kind of do see this happening already where people are, you know, they're paying for, we call it sometimes super fast storage. So they'll pay for it for important operations that they're building into their AI, but they don't do it for other things. And so I think it's going to be an educational process for people too, as they're building out these huge AI stacks. You know, what are the important decisions that you need to think about as you're building this and supporting your own processes so that you later have what you need to be able to make this better? Because people just kind of trust, like, it's always going to be there. It's always going to be what I need it to be. But there's a lot of underpinnings that people need to think about to make sure that they're building their AI programs well.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point that I've started to see in the industry, and that is with the rise of AI, especially in security, and the move towards leveraging AI to build out preventative security models and security governance models, that the need for SIM actually reduces tremendously, and it becomes more of where is it written in the compliance requirements that I have to have those logs for, like PCI or Antoinette. You know, but if I can get to a certain point within my preventative model rather than the traditional reactive model, then how does that affect the downstream investments in SIM and other reactive tools? I think we're at a very, very early stage there, but it's definitely I'm starting to see and have a lot of conversations around that. What does the preventative model actually mean from my investments in my reactive model? So,
The
and actually, that
framing
brings
that
me.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, James.
I was going to say the framing that I like to give my team is, even if I can prevent something, I sometimes still want to know someone tried. And so it'll come down to that of like, it's fine that we could prevent it. I need to know that someone tried this, especially like depending on what it is, so that I can go take action.
Yes, my
Very
detection
true.
friend. No, I agree. But I think AI actually would, because it's going to act on that, you know, I now know that somebody knocked on this door. AI, instead of the traditional reactive, it's the AI can reason it through, okay, like, well, this is a non-critical system, and it can do its thing. I think you're right. You have to know that it's happening, and I think that's critical.
I think on the
So
positive side too, like this massive, we're really moving towards a situation where data centers are going to become like the fourth utility. We're going to have so much compute power with all these data centers going up that we're going to be able to do things that we couldn't do before because we were very much limited by either data throughput, storage, whatever processing time. But I think all these startups that are coming out, right, they're all test beds for all the things that we've just kind of gotten used to not being able to do or not being able to do well. And I'm seeing it already, like I'll see a demo and I'm like, holy, you can do that. Like I've just already resigned myself to the fact that we couldn't do that thing or we couldn't do it well. So we're just not going to do it. So I've had a few of those, like feeling like really old in the room and just thinking like, be quiet. You don't want to tell people that you're, having this aha moment that they just figured this thing out and they think it's cool, but I think it's really cool. So I'm just really excited about that, just being able to see the people who actually do the thing on a daily basis with the right tools so that they can do their job and spend their time doing the things that they do best versus battling with a tool or battling with the lack of what they're capable, doing with the tool.
yeah, I am old. I remember the art of the possible, when cloud came out. And
Yeah.
that was phenomenal. I think the concept of art of the possible with AI is, I mean, it's incredible what it opens up for us. So given that, it, I'll go to our last question, and that's if you're talking to your board or your CISO, where would you recommend the enterprise prioritize their investments for AI-driven threats and defenses?
So I typically will start with the business strategy, right? Like, so we need to be addressing that from a standpoint that they care about, because we can come with our security agenda all day long, but they don't care if it's not aligned to whatever the objectives of the business are. So in my particular business, we do AI compute. So they care about us being able to find new customers who want to buy AI compute or who want to leave hyperscalers and move to a smaller cloud system. So we would be pitching things that, would appeal to them. But I'll just use my last place that I came from. It was a software as a service startup, and they were very, very green to AI and trying to figure out where they should spend their very limited budget to move forward. And that's where I was very much enjoying all these startups that are popping up, right? There's a startup for everything. And I think just from my standpoint, being in the industry for so long, we kind of get used to just the safety and security of the tools that we have. And we like to stay with the things that we know are going to work. And we focus on the things that are broken, right? And only rip and replace the things that are broken. But I think it's really important to look at those business objectives and say, is there a tool out there, or is there a champion and a challenger that we could go out and test and see, is this a big change for us? Because it could be a complete game changer. And if we don't challenge ourselves to, think of it from a business strategy perspective and really go look for that stuff, we're gonna fall way behind.
I'll approach this from the enterprise security angle. I feel like I should preface with saying I don't believe in buying tools I don't need. And so a lot of my approach to procurement for like my team's security needs comes from my understanding of the active and probable threats that exist. So it's a lot of my own intelligence of, okay, these are the ways that AI is being used to propagate actual threats. So not just what can happen in theory, and my understanding of where that lies in the realm of what's probable and possible, but also we are actively seeing this happen. And so one of the things was Disney got breached because one of their engineers downloaded a plugin that claimed to be like an AI image generator or something. I don't even know if it actually used AI, but people are willing to download and run software simply on the premise that it might be an AI tool, which means I need to be worried about what people are running on their endpoints. It's the same as any of the like different code editors that came out that use AI tools and MCPs and things. I think that endpoints became a big thing this year because of the rise of like the local code editors, and then all the various things that we're using MCPs and so on and so forth. So a lot of the tools we looked at this year have to do with protection of the endpoint. So that's kind of the approach that I've taken so far. And the day that we see someone effectively and at scale use like an MCP to perform some type of attack, we'll adjust. But right now, that like it's just not the most probable use case to solve for.
Yeah, both of you make some great points there. I think framing it in, the threat and the risk is critical here. But at the same time, I had a good conversation a couple weeks ago. We had, CISO I was talking to, I've got 37 tools in my stack. And I looked and I said, how do you like, and he's like, I also have 36 AIs now that I'm doing TPRM against, that we're doing, and they're literally there now to the point where they interview the AI. They actually
That's
make
kind of cool.
it is. So they sit there and they ask it all kinds of, they've got about 40 questions that they run through in their battery, and they interview the AI through various prompts and just to see what it does. And I'm like, dude, that's so time consuming. That's crazy. So I think
But
you
they're
are starting to
learning.
see they're learning and they're understanding if it's worth actually leveraging that vendor's AI. And I think you're starting to see and you're starting to see this consolidation or this centralization of the brain. Where it's like, okay, we've got this existing investment, or we're going to go, I hate using the term platforming, but it is a reality when, you've got to manage all of that third and nth party risk in the AI models that are all across your stack. And I say, okay, like, just give me one throat to choke, and I'll
Mhm.
focus on the quality of the data in and out, and then the actual automation, and response actions that the AI is going to take on my behalf, like, and getting the value out of it there. But it's a crazy time, and it's an awesome time in my opinion.
I feel like I just want to go all over the place and just ask people, what are you doing? What are you doing? I want to learn from everybody because everybody's figuring it out in their own way. And the more I go to different CISO functions, and like I just went to a place called CruiseCon, and they had the former director of the CIA there, and he said, SIM is dead. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? We have to have a SIM, right? So just like questions like that and examples of how he thinks that it's going away really just like kind of makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck, because I love this stuff, right? Like we get so stagnant sometimes with what we're doing that I think if we really just open up our minds to this and really go down these paths and look through the doors, we're going to find a lot of really good solutions. And I can't wait to
Well,
see what all of our bright minds do with all this technology.
yeah, I generally blame marketing for that. We just hear what they want us to buy. And I'm sorry,
Well,
Jackie,
we
did I
also
say
have
that out
3
loud?
seconds. We also have 3 seconds to pay attention to anything, right? So we're like, what is the message you're trying to send me, right? What am I supposed to get out of this?
Yeah, no, so I'm actually on my way to B-sides, where I'll see Antoinette there. But what I'm really curious to see, because B-sides is a much more technical, much more independent individual contributor conference. I'm really curious to see what the actual hardcore security folks are doing with AI there versus what's being pitched out to the CISOs on what they need to do.
Mhm.
I
I
want to
think
see
that
what they're
connection is really
actually.
important. And I'm guilty myself. I haven't gone to any of these B-sides events, and people keep telling me I'm an idiot because I haven't. So I'm glad that you popped up today and are reminding me that I need to do that. But it's so important because we get so separated, right? We're trying to have conversations about money and conversations about how do we get this stuff done. But the people who are actually doing the work really need that connection to make sure that we're doing the right things, and actually listening. Because I find sometimes my analyst team, they're like, hello, you are way too busy. You need to actually hear what we're saying. And I'm like, okay, I will slow down and listen now, but sometimes they have to be a little pointed and trying to get the attention because it's just crazy.
Awesome. Well,
Fantastic. Yeah, this has been a
Chapter.
really, really great discussion, and the audience is submitting a ton of questions as well. So we're going to try to get to as many of them as possible, but this has been fabulous so far. So thank you to everyone who has submitted questions. We're going to just try and grab a handful of them. So there's an overall theme of over-reliance leads to vulnerability, right? Cassandra, where do you think the line is between helpful automation and harmful complacency?
I think it lies in the hands of the people. The people who are responsible for the AI really need to have clarity on where is the line, right? Have we sat down and done a risk management exercise to figure out how much risk are we willing to take? How much are we willing to go out into the wild, wild west and do new and different things? And it all goes back to listening to your practitioners. Whoever you have that's an expert in your team, you really need to be listening to them and giving them the authority to make, recommendations and actually taking them to heart. Because I think a lot of times we apply our old rules of thinking to new technology and we limit ourselves. Like if you really think about the fact that AI is not new, right? It's been around for a long time. It's been in a ton of products that we've been using, and we've just been essentially turning a blind eye to it. But now we're all awakened and we're all, figuring it out as we go. But there are people who actually really know what they're doing, and we need to give them the empowerment to be able to tell us, this is a good idea or this is a bad idea. And here's my data, right? Like listening to the data and making sound decisions will help us figure that out.
Perfect. So, Antoinette, I mean, your line about destructive behavior really landed and kind of resonated with me. How are you testing those AI boundaries before deployment so that a system can't make any sort of irreversible change?
I think this goes back to what kind of power am I giving it in the first place? And so an agent can't mess up if it can't do certain things. Whereas we do for some of our work, like an agent can close a ticket, which is a reversible change, like I can go and fix that. It's annoying, but I can fix that. But on the other end, making sure that the scopes and permissions that an agent is operating with are well defined and well scoped is the first step. Beyond that, you can have as many guardrails as you want, but when you're dealing with something that's like non-deterministic, it gets a little difficult because the whole point is you can't accurately and reliably predict what it'll do. And so the guardrails that exist have to be functional and technical.
Perfect. And so, if AI actions are gated by human sign-off, how, Cassandra, would you keep that from becoming a bottleneck during real incidents?
If AI incidents are gated by human interaction, is that
Human
the question?
sign-off, so human approval.
Okay.
Yep.
I think it's probably not too much more different than actual physical, people sitting in an incident command room or sitting on a Slack channel trying to figure things out, right? You need to be nimble and quick and have people that are fully empowered to make decisions. And not, have it be 3 lanes or 3 layers of command that you have to go through to make decisions. You really have to sit down and think about this stuff ahead of time and have exception handling processes so that people on your team can do what they need to do.
Perfect. So, Chris, I see this question I'm going to have you lead with, and then I'm curious if everyone else can chime in. But if MCP style attacks do start becoming more of a real threat vector, or really if it's any other AI attack for that matter, what early warning signs would tell you to pivot your defensive strategy?
I treat MCP no different than I do APIs, right? It's the fundamentals are going to apply. So I think making sure that all of your fundamentals are hardened. That's really where we're going to see. I think there are unique aspects of MCP where, whether it's poisoning, whether it's, I was just at one of the Ben from OWASP was talking about promptware is what we should be calling it now because it's the actual attack. Like the prompt engineering is just the actual technique. Um, I don't know if I would really. I mean, what I'm not a fan of are the MCP firewalls, things like that. Where I do like there's a little bit of a rise of like AI SASE, where that's really, really critical, especially as the MCPs and the plugins, those start to proliferate. That's an easier way to enforce at the endpoint where that traffic actually goes and how it actually ingresses and egresses, and then what data can actually access. Um, yeah, I think that's kind of where we're headed in that manner. Antoinette, Cassandra,
Cassandra.
what do you guys think?
I think
Um,
one thing that comes to mind real quick on that is just, I have new clarity on the shared responsibility model within AI compute. And so it's really important to look at all these individual threat modeling exercises where you're looking at, what if this happens, right? How am I poised to respond to that? But you also need to really think about, where are you applying security tools, processes, technology, and education for people within your entire security stack, because it all goes back to baseline security and whether you're creating that layered defense. So you really have to revisit those fundamentals and make sure that you're not forgetting things. And it's really easy with as many AI startups are coming, and as many even medium-sized companies that are spinning up constant AI tools. A lot of times they are spinning things up so fast that they're not thinking about that stuff. And you're assuming that they're taking care of it. They're not necessarily buttoning everything up and making sure that it's layered. So sorry, didn't want to digress there, but it's really important to understand what responsibility you have in that shared responsibility matrix, what you're sharing with your provider, and what tools you may be needing to layer in there, or even just processes to handle whatever, gaps that you may have.
Um, so back in about April or May is when I began exploring what we might need to do around like the rise of MCPs and what we might want to do in terms of like enterprise security. So I looked at, I think one of, we'll say AI SASE type MCP control vendors, and decided not to go with them because remote MCPs started to become popular. And I felt like that business model falls apart in the world of remote MCPs. I cannot control how someone connects to a remote MCP the same way I can control a local one. And then with that thought, I went further up the chain of, okay, if you using an MCP by its very nature means you plan to send this data to a model of some sort, then that means I need to control what data you have access to in the first place. So that if your tool gets poisoned for whatever reason, and for what it's worth, I actually think remote MCPs are better than local ones. But if your tool gets poisoned for whatever reason, the data that you have access to does not matter. And so I think it comes back to a data security problem at its root. And so that is where we've decided to really have focus and make sure we understand the data that people have access to for use with MCPs and LLMs.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think they just released yesterday the paper or the research around it. Only takes 250 documents to poison. They thought it was going to be hundreds of thousands or millions, and it's only 250, and it's a consistent number, no matter what the size of the model.
Which is very impressive.
Very and scary.
It's terrifying. It's very,
Yeah.
very scary. All right. So I think we have time for just one last question. Antoinette, I think it was you that mentioned focusing on probable threats instead of every possible one. So how do you keep that threat model current since AI-driven attack methods are evolving so quickly?
I read a lot. I read a lot of articles, which, by the way, I don't think that journalists have figured out how to report about AI-related threats, because a lot of the stuff that happens, I think there was one that came out about McDonald's months ago. There was no issue with the AI chatbot itself. Someone had a default password on like a back-end platform or something that controlled it. But the headline of it made it seem like McDonald's recruiting AI vulnerable or something like that. I digress. I read a lot of news. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I ask people. I try to stay on top of current trends. I spend my weekends reading research and like reading blog posts. I think that this is one of those things where, because it moves so quickly, I have to also kind of consume as much as possible, then run it through my own filter of this makes sense for my environment. This does not make sense. and then make decisions based on that, because I don't have infinite budget, and I also don't have infinite political capital to spend, where we try to have a really clean and close relationship with our business partners, with engineering. And so I've built a brand where if I'm telling you to do something, it's because it matters. And so if I start making decisions and buying tools based on fear mongering or improbable eventualities, people will lose trust in me.
I love hearing that, Antoinette. Like, I'm the same. I want to read, I want to talk. I think every practitioner should build a network, right? Like, as a CISO, we have the CISO community, we have CISO society. Everybody is open to go to breakfast clubs, which are all over the country, and they're free to join. You need to create your expert network where you can tap in if you're at a loss or you're not sure where to start. And really surround yourself with people that are smarter than you in this business, because being the dumbest one in the room is the best way to get the things done that you need to get done. And most people in cyber are very happy to take you under their wing and teach you whatever they, you want to know. You just really need to seek it out.
Fantastic. No, I think that's actually the perfect ending point and hits the nail right on the head. So really appreciate everyone joining us today. We'll make sure to share the white paper over in the chat if you're interested in kind of diving a little bit deeper into some of the findings and discussion points on this webinar. And then, of course, check out the AI Security Council if you're potentially interested in applying to be part of it. But thank you, everyone, for your time, and see you next time.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.